My name is Kimberly Davis. I'm 32, and last month my father called to tell me my mom was seriously ill. I dropped everything at my New York apartment, canceled client meetings, and spent $1,200 on a last-minute flight to Phoenix. When I arrived, exhausted and worried sick, I found my parents and sister Amanda packing swimsuits and sunscreen. Turns out, nobody was sick. They just needed a free babysitter for Amanda's 3 kids while they enjoyed a 10-day Bahamas cruise. The betrayal hit me like a freight train, but instead of exploding, I smiled. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if your family has ever taken advantage of your kindness. Trust me, you'll want to see how this played out. Growing up in Phoenix, I was always the responsible one. While other kids were having fun at sleepovers or school dances, I was often home making sure my younger sister Amanda had dinner or finished her homework. Our dynamic was established early. Amanda was the baby of the family who could do no wrong, and I was the reliable one expected to pick up the slack. Our childhood home was a modest 4-bedroom in a middle-class neighborhood. Dad worked as an insurance adjuster, and Mom was an elementary school teacher. They weren't bad parents by any means, but they definitely played favorites. Amanda could cry her way out of any punishment, while I was held to impossibly high standards. When Amanda failed math in 7th grade, my parents asked me to tutor her instead of hiring professional help, even though I was struggling with my own advanced classes. When she wrecked Dad's car at 16, guess who gave up her savings for a class trip to help pay for repairs? That's right, me. College was my first taste of freedom. I attended Arizona State on scholarship while Amanda partied her way through community college, dropping out after 2 semesters. Even then, my parents called me regularly to help Amanda with job applications or to loan her money for rent. The pattern continued into our 20s. Amanda had her first child, Tyler, at 23. By 27, she had 3 kids with 2 different fathers, neither of whom remained in the picture. Through it all, our parents continued enabling her, watching the kids whenever she wanted to find herself or have me time. I finally escaped to New York 6 years ago. After earning my MBA, I landed a job at a boutique event planning firm that specializes in corporate events. Through hard work and late nights, I built a reputation as someone who could handle high-pressure situations with grace. Last year, I was promoted to senior event manager, handling clients with budgets in the millions. My relationship with my family improved with distance. I'd visit twice a year, send gifts for birthdays and Christmas, and maintain a cordial relationship during our weekly phone calls. I genuinely love my niece and nephews, Tyler, now 9, Lily, 7, and Max, 4, despite their mother's entitled behavior. I limited contact mainly for self-preservation. Every conversation with Amanda inevitably turned into complaints about how hard motherhood was, followed by not-so-subtle hints that I should help more because I only had myself to worry about. The week before my dad's call, I was deep into planning a major product launch for our biggest client, a tech company unveiling their groundbreaking new software. The event was scheduled for the following month, and I was working 14-hour days coordinating vendors, finalizing the venue details, and preparing contingency plans. My boss, Nancy, had entrusted me with this $2 million event because of my track record, and the success of this launch could mean a substantial bonus and potential partnership. When Dad called that Tuesday night, I was reviewing vendor contracts in my apartment. His voice sounded strange, tight with worry. "Kimberly, it's Mom. She's got pneumonia, and the doctors are concerned. She's asking for you." My blood ran cold. Mom had battled breast cancer 5 years earlier, and her immune system had never fully recovered. "How bad is it?" I asked, already pulling up flight options on my laptop. "Bad enough that you should come home. Soon." His voice cracked. "Please, Kim." That was all it took. I called Nancy immediately, explaining the family emergency. Though clearly displeased about the timing, she was understanding and agreed I could work remotely where possible. I booked the earliest flight I could find, a red-eye leaving in 4 hours that cost nearly a month's rent. I packed haphazardly, called a taxi, and raced to JFK. The flight was turbulent, both literally and emotionally. I dozed fitfully between bouts of anxiety about Mom and frantic email exchanges with my assistant about the event preparations. When we landed in Phoenix, I hadn't slept more than an hour. I grabbed my luggage and immediately hailed a rideshare to my parents' house, not even stopping for coffee. Little did I know what awaited me there, a betrayal so calculated it would force me to reevaluate my entire relationship with my family. The Arizona sun was blinding as the car pulled up to my parents' Spanish-style ranch home. Palm trees swayed gently in the driveway, the same ones Dad had planted when we were kids. I paid the driver, grabbed my suitcase, and rushed to the front door, my heart pounding with dread about Mom's condition. I didn't bother knocking, using my old key instead. "Mom?" I called out, dropping my bags in the entryway. "Dad? I'm here." The sound of laughter floated from the kitchen, not the subdued tones you'd expect in a house with a seriously ill patient. Confused, I followed the noise. There, gathered around the granite island counter, stood my entire family. Mom was vibrant and healthy, organizing a pile of beach hats. Dad was checking a printed itinerary. Amanda was folding tropical print dresses into a suitcase. 3 matching luggage sets stood by the sliding glass door. "Kimberly," Mom exclaimed cheerfully. "You made it." Perfect timing. I stood frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. "You're not sick." An awkward silence fell over the kitchen. Mom and Amanda exchanged glances while Dad suddenly became very interested in his paperwork. "Well," Mom finally said, "I had a little cold last week, but I'm fine now." "A cold?" I repeated numbly. "Dad told me you had pneumonia. That doctors were concerned. That you were asking for me." Dad cleared his throat. "Well, we needed you to come, and we knew you'd make excuses about work if we told you the real reason." "The real reason?" My voice had risen an octave. That's when Amanda stepped forward with her practiced smile, the one she'd used since childhood to get her way. "We're going on a cruise. 10 days in the Bahamas. It's been planned for months, and we really need this break." "What does that have to do with me?" I asked, though the sinking feeling in my stomach told me I already knew. "The kids," Amanda said brightly. "They can't come with us. It's an adults-only cruise. And we knew you'd be perfect to watch them while we're gone." The room spun slightly. "You lied about Mom being seriously ill, so I would fly across the country to be your babysitter?" "Well, when you put it like that," Dad began. "Yes, that's exactly how I'm putting it," I snapped. "Because that's what happened." Amanda rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. You were coming home for the holidays anyway, right? This is just a few weeks earlier. I was coming home for 3 days at Christmas, not 2 weeks in October. I'm in the middle of planning a major event. I could lose my job over this." Mom finally spoke up. "Sweetie, family comes first. Amanda and your father, and I really need this vacation. It's been so stressful with the kids and everything. And my life isn't stressful?" I was shouting now. I paid $1,200 for a last-minute flight. I thought Mom was dying. From the living room, 3 small faces peered around the corner. Tyler, with his mop of blonde hair and curious eyes, Lily, clutching her ever-present stuffed unicorn, and little Max, thumb firmly in his mouth. Despite my anger, my heart softened slightly at the sight of them. Amanda noticed my gaze and seized the opportunity. "See? They're so excited to spend time with their Aunt Kimberly. You don't have kids, so you wouldn't understand how desperately parents need breaks sometimes." That condescending comment reignited my fury. "I understand perfectly that you want a vacation. What I don't understand is why you had to lie and manipulate me instead of asking like a normal person." Dad stuck between us. "Now, Kimberly, don't overreact. We knew you were busy with work, but family obligations come first. We needed someone we could trust with the kids, and you're their aunt. Family obligations? I laughed bitterly. Like honesty? Respect for each other's lives? Or does obligation only go one way in this family? Mom's expression hardened. The look that had cowed me as a child. That's enough, Kimberly. We've made arrangements, tickets are paid for, and we're leaving tomorrow morning. The kids need looking after. Are you really going to abandon your niece and nephews because of a little white lie? A little white lie? I was incredulous. You made me think you were seriously ill. Well, Dad said with infuriating casualness, we knew you wouldn't come if we told you the truth. And there it was, the admission that they knew exactly what they were doing. They had deliberately manipulated me, counting on my love for Mom and my sense of family duty. Amanda stepped closer, her voice honeyed, but her eyes calculating. It's just 10 days, Kim. The kids are really well behaved now. Tyler's ADHD is mostly under control with his medication. Lily only has dance class twice a week, and Max, well, he's still in his destructive phase, but he naps in the afternoon. Under control? I repeated. The last time I visited, Tyler disassembled my hair dryer with a butter knife. Lily had a 2-hour meltdown over a broken crayon, and Max drew on every wall in the guest room. They've matured, Amanda insisted, though her darting eyes betrayed her. Besides, they adore you. I looked again at the children, who were now fully in the doorway. Despite everything, they weren't to blame for their mother's actions. Tyler gave me a small wave, and I couldn't help but wave back. Our ship leaves at 11 tomorrow, Mom said, clearly considering the matter settled. We'll go over the children's schedules tonight. The realization hit me. They never doubted I would cave. They had counted on my lifelong pattern of giving in, of putting everyone else's needs before my own. In their minds, I'd protest, then surrender, just like always. I was trapped. If I refused and left, the kids would be abandoned. If I stayed, I was rewarding their manipulation. As the full weight of their betrayal sank in, I felt something inside me shift fundamentally, a lifetime of resentment crystallizing into clarity. My family had gone too far this time. That evening, while my parents and Amanda continued packing as if nothing had happened, I retreated to the guest room to call Nancy. My hands trembled as I dialed. This wasn't just about family drama anymore. My career was at stake. Let me get this straight, Nancy said after I explained the situation. Your mother isn't actually sick? They lied to get you to babysit. Her New York directness was oddly comforting. Exactly. And now they're leaving tomorrow for 10 days. Kim, we have the Horizon launch in 3 weeks. I sympathize with your situation, but there's no way you can be out of the office for that long right now. I closed my eyes, feeling the walls closing in. I know. I'm trying to figure out a solution. Either come back or we'll have to reassign the project to Melissa, she said bluntly. I'm sorry, but there's too much at stake. Reassignment would effectively end my chances of partnership. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed, trapped in an impossible position. If I abandoned the kids, I'd never forgive myself. If I stayed, I'd be sacrificing the career I'd worked so hard to build and showing my family that manipulating me worked. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. It was Lily, holding her unicorn. Aunt Kim? Are you mad at us? Her small voice broke my heart. I pulled her into a hug. No, sweetie. Never at you. I'm just surprised about the trip. Mommy said you'd be happy to play with us, she said innocently. Of course she did. I always love spending time with you, I told her truthfully. I just wish I'd known sooner. Lily nodded solemnly. Like when Mommy surprises us with the dentist. I hate surprises. Out of the mouths of babes. Dinner was a tense affair. Mom had ordered pizza, and while the kids chattered excitedly about all the things we would do together, the adults ate in uncomfortable silence. I noticed that despite the months of planning Amanda had mentioned, there seemed to be very little actual preparation for the kids. After the children went to bed, Amanda provided what she called a handover briefing, which consisted of a hastily scribbled note with their school details and a vague outline of their routines. Tyler needs his medication each morning with breakfast. The prescription bottle is in my bathroom. Lily has dance on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You'll need to get her there by 4. Max still has accidents sometimes, so there are pull-ups in his drawer. Oh, and none of them will eat vegetables unless you hide them in pasta sauce. What about emergency contacts? Their pediatrician's information? Health insurance cards? I asked. Amanda waved dismissively. They're healthy kids. You worry too much. And what about money for food, activities, or emergencies? I pressed. My sister had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. We spent quite a bit on the cruise. I'm sure you can cover anything they need, and we'll pay you back. You make good money in New York, right? Before I could respond, Mom interrupted. It's getting late, and we have an early start tomorrow. Everything will be fine, Kimberly. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be. Their departure the next morning was a whirlwind. Dad loaded the luggage while Mom fussed over the kids, giving last-minute instructions and kisses. Amanda barely said goodbye to her children, too busy checking if she'd packed enough sunscreen. Our cell service might be spotty on the ship, Dad mentioned casually as they headed for the door. Don't call unless it's a real emergency. And just like that, they were gone, leaving me with 3 children and a growing sense of dread. The chaos began almost immediately. Max threw a tantrum when he realized his mother had actually left. Lily couldn't find her favorite hair clips for school. Tyler announced he hated the breakfast I made and demanded chocolate cereal instead. By the time I got them all to school late, because no one had told me about the specific drop-off procedures, I was already exhausted. I returned to the empty house and tried to salvage some work, sending emails and joining a conference call about the Horizon launch. We need those vendor confirmations by tomorrow, my assistant Julian reminded me. And the client wants to revise the seating chart again. I'm on it, I promised, though I had no idea how I'd manage everything. That afternoon, school pickup was another disaster. I went to the wrong entrance, then had to navigate the complex carpool lane system while other parents honked impatiently. Tyler had lost his backpack, Lily was in tears because someone had said her drawing was babyish, and Max had apparently decided pants were optional and was missing one leg of his jeans. The evening spiraled further out of control. I discovered the refrigerator was nearly empty except for condiments and some questionable leftovers. After an emergency trip to the grocery store, with all 3 kids in tow because I couldn't leave them alone, I returned to find that Max had managed to unlock my phone and was in the process of deleting my emails. Look, Aunt Kim. I'm fixing it, he announced proudly as I watched in horror. By the time I got them all bathed and into bed, it was past 10. I collapsed onto the couch, only to receive a text from Amanda. It was a selfie of her and our parents on the cruise ship, cocktails in hand, with the caption, "Bon voyage. Finally relaxing. Kids being good." I stared at their smiling faces, my exhaustion turning to simmering rage. They were finally relaxing while I was sacrificing my career and sanity. And this was only day 1 of 10. Sleep eluded me that night. Between checking work emails, trying to recover deleted files, and Max waking up twice with nightmares, I maybe got 3 hours of rest. As I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, I realized with perfect clarity, this wasn't love or family duty. This was exploitation. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't willing to accept it. By day 2, I was running on fumes. The morning routine was slightly smoother until I discovered Tyler was out of his ADHD medication. Mom usually gets more when the bottle is empty, he explained, appending the container to show me the single pill remaining. I called the pharmacy, only to learn they couldn't refill the prescription without doctor authorization, and Amanda hadn't left any information about Tyler's doctor. I can try calling around to pediatricians in the area, the pharmacist suggested sympathetically. That would be great, I said, adding it to my growing list of problems. I managed to get the kids to school on time, then set up my makeshift office at the dining room table. The Horizon launch was unraveling in my absence. Vendors were backing out without in-person reassurance. The venue had questions about technical requirements, and the client was growing increasingly anxious about my remote status. I was deep in crisis management mode when I got a call from Lily's school. "Ms. Davis? This is the school nurse. Lily says she has a stomachache and needs to go home." 20 minutes later, I picked up a perfectly healthy-looking Lily, who admitted as we left the school that she just missed mommy and wanted company. My work conference call had to be rescheduled. Again. By afternoon, things went from bad to worse. While I was helping Tyler with his math homework, Max decided to explore my laptop. I heard the crash from the kitchen. Running into the living room, I found my $2,000 MacBook on the floor, screen shattered, with Max standing over it, a hammer from God knows where in his small hand. I wanted to see inside, he explained innocently. "My laptop, with all my work files. My presentations for the Horizon launch. Gone." I didn't yell. I couldn't. I just stood there, staring at the destruction of both my property and likely my career. Lily started crying, thinking I was angry. Tyler began frantically trying to pick up the pieces. Max looked confused by my silence. I gathered them all for a group hug, assuring them everything was okay, then sent them to play in the backyard while I assessed the damage. The laptop was beyond repair. I had cloud backups of most files, but not the latest revisions of the Horizon presentations. My phone rang. It was Nancy. "Kimberly, we need to talk." Her voice was professional but cold. "The Horizon people are getting nervous. They've asked about having Melissa step in as backup." "Nancy, I can fix this. I just need. We can't risk losing this account, Kim. They're talking about taking their business to Henderson and Associates if we can't demonstrate stability. Henderson was our biggest competitor. Give me 24 hours, I pleaded. I'll figure something out." After we hung up, I stared at the wall, the full weight of the situation crushing me. I was about to lose the career I'd spent years building because my family had manipulated me into an impossible situation. The doorbell rang. It was the pharmacy delivery with Tyler's medication, which they couldn't refill because they couldn't reach his doctor. One more problem without a solution. That night, after another chaotic dinner where Lily refused to eat anything but plain pasta, Tyler built and launched a soda bottle rocket in the living room, and Max drew on the dining room table with permanent marker. I retreated to the bathroom for a moment of peace. Sitting on the edge of the bathtub, I finally broke down. Silent tears turned to body-racking sobs as years of suppressed frustration and resentment poured out. I'd always been the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who sacrificed. And what had it gotten me? Taken advantage of, again and again. As I washed my face, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was exhausted, defeated. But underneath that, I saw something else. Determination. "I don't deserve this," I whispered to myself. And, for the first time, I truly believed it. That's when the idea began to form. Not out of malice, but out of self-preservation and the belated realization that sometimes the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to stop enabling destructive patterns. I made 3 phone calls that night. The first was to my friend Jessica in New York, who listened to the whole sordid tale without interruption. "What do you need?" she asked simply when I finished. "A place to stay when I get back to New York," I replied. "I might not have a job anymore." "You always have a place with me," she promised. "And Kim? It's about time you stood up to them." The second call was to Julian, my assistant, explaining my plan to return to New York and salvage what I could of the Horizon launch. The third call was the hardest and the most important. I called my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister who lived just outside Phoenix. Carol had always been the black sheep of the family, mainly because she called out bad behavior instead of enabling it. She and Amanda had a strained relationship because Carol never hesitated to criticize Amanda's parenting. They did what? Carol exclaimed when I explained the situation. Her outrage was validating. I know it's a lot to ask, I said, but the kids shouldn't suffer for their parents' behavior. Bring them over, Carol said without hesitation. I've been saying for years that those children need structure and consistency. As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time since arriving in Phoenix, I felt in control. I had a plan. The next morning, I sat the kids down for an honest conversation. I love you all very much, I told them, but I need to go back to New York for my job. You're going to stay with Great Aunt Carol for a few days until your mom and grandparents get back. I expected tears or protests, but instead, Tyler asked thoughtfully, is it because we've been too much trouble? My heart broke a little. Absolutely not. This is about grown-up responsibilities and choices. None of this is your fault. Will Aunt Carol let us have ice cream? Max wanted to know. I'm sure she will, I smiled. And she has that big yard with the tire swing, remember? Lily looked concerned. But what about Mommy? Won't she be mad if we're not here? Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. Your mom made a choice to go on vacation, I explained gently. I'm making a choice too. Sometimes adults have to make hard choices. As they process this, I added, and I promise I'll video chat with you every day until your mom gets back. With that settled, I began documenting everything. Taking photos of the house's condition, saving Amanda's minimal instructions, and writing detailed notes about each child's needs and routines. I wasn't being vindictive, I was being thorough. Next, I packed the kids' essentials and favorite toys. Then I wrote a letter, calm, factual, and unapologetic, explaining exactly why what they had done was wrong and damaging to both me and their relationship with me. I included the receipts for the expenses I'd incurred, from my flight to the groceries I'd bought. With each action, the fog of obligation and guilt that had surrounded me for years began to lift. This wasn't about revenge. It was about finally establishing boundaries that should have existed long ago. The next morning, I loaded the kids and their belongings into the rental car I'd arranged. The drive to Aunt Carol's was filled with Tyler's excited chatter about her pool, Lily's questions about when her mother would return, and Max's attempts to sing the alphabet song on repeat. Carol's home was a stark contrast to the chaos of Amanda's. The Spanish-style house sat on a half-acre lot with mature citrus trees and a well-maintained garden. Wind chimes tinkled gently from the covered porch where Carol waited, a warm smile on her face. There are my great-nephews and niece, she called, coming down the steps to greet us. Carol had raised 3 children of her own, all now successful adults, and had a natural way with kids that immediately put them at ease. She knelt to Max's level, admiring the toy dinosaur he thrust toward her. She complimented Lily's braids and asked Tyler about his latest science project. Inside, Carol had prepared bedrooms for each child, with thoughtful touches like nightlights and stuffed animals. The kitchen counters held ingredients for cookie baking, an activity she had planned for that afternoon. I've cleared my schedule for the next week, Carol told me as the kids explored the house. My book club can manage without me, and Barbara next door will help with school pickups if needed. I handed her the folder I'd prepared with medical information, school details, and daily routines. I've included everything I know, which isn't much. Amanda didn't leave much information. Carol's expression tightened slightly. That doesn't surprise me. Don't worry, we'll figure it out together. We sat the children down to explain the arrangement again, making sure they understood that this wasn't a punishment and that they could call me anytime. And we'll have plenty of fun, Carol assured them. I thought we could make cookies today, and tomorrow maybe we'll visit the Children's Museum. Lily's eyes widened. Mommy never takes us to the museum. Well, Great Aunt Carol does things differently, Carol said with a wink. After helping settle the kids in, I found myself in Carol's kitchen, a cup of tea steaming before me. You're doing the right thing, Kimberly, she said, joining me at the table. Amanda needs to learn that her actions have consequences. I'm not trying to punish her, I said, suddenly feeling uncertain. I just can't sacrifice my career and mental health anymore. That's not punishment, dear. That's having healthy boundaries, something this family has never been good at. Carol patted my hand. The children will be fine. In fact, I suspect they'll thrive with a bit of consistency and structure. I nodded, feeling both relief and lingering guilt. I'll call every day to check in, and I've booked a flight back as soon as my work situation is stabilized. Take the time you need, Carol assured me. This might be the wake-up call Amanda and your parents need. Before leaving, I hugged each child tightly, promising to video chat that evening. As I drove away, watching them wave from Carol's porch, I felt a complex mix of emotions, sadness at leaving them, anger at being put in this position, but also a growing sense of empowerment. Back at my parents' house, I completed the final steps of my plan. I placed my letter on the kitchen counter where it couldn't be missed. I set up automatic replies to my family's numbers with a professional message explaining that I was unavailable due to the work crisis their deception had created. I tidied the house, documented its condition with photos, and packed my belongings. As a final touch, I left the shattered remains of my laptop on the dining room table with a note detailing exactly how it had been broken and the cost of replacement. My flight back to New York was scheduled for early evening. As I locked the front door behind me, I felt like I was closing a chapter of my life, not ending the book, but perhaps finally writing it on my own terms. During the flight, I focused on salvaging what I could of the Horizon launch. Using the in-flight Wi-Fi and my tablet, I recreated portions of the lost presentation and emailed detailed instructions to Julian. By the time we landed at JFK, I had a plan to save both the event and possibly my job. Jessica met me at the airport, enveloping me in a hug before I could even put down my bags. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. As we drove to her apartment, I checked in with Carol. The video call showed 3 happy children, faces smeared with chocolate from cookie baking, eagerly telling me about their day. "Aunt Carol lets us help cook," Tyler announced proudly. "And we have to put our toys away before getting new ones out," Lily added, as if this revolutionary concept both puzzled and pleased her. Max just waved frantically, shouting, "Miss you, Aunt Kim," before running off to show Carol's cat a cookie. "They're adjusting beautifully," Carol assured me. "Don't worry about a thing here." That night, in Jessica's guest room, I slept better than I had in days, unburdened by the weight of others' expectations and secure in the knowledge that I had finally done what was right for everyone, including myself. The explosion happened exactly as I'd anticipated. 3 days after I returned to New York, Amanda called from the cruise ship, her voice shrill with panic and rage. "What do you mean you're in New York? Where are my kids?" I maintained the calm, professional tone I'd practiced. "The children are safe with Aunt Carol." I had to return to salvage my career after being manipulated into leaving it. "You abandoned my children." She was practically screeching now. "No, Amanda. I ensured they were safely cared for by a responsible adult after their mother abandoned them for a cruise." Her sputtering was interrupted by my father grabbing the phone. "Kimberly and Davis, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "Setting boundaries," I replied evenly. "Something I should have done years ago. We asked you for one simple favor. You lied about Mom being critically ill to manipulate me into flying across the country. That's not asking for a favor. That's exploitation." "Don't be so dramatic," he scoffed. "It was just a little white lie. A lie that cost me $1,200 in airfare, nearly cost me my job, and destroyed my $2,000 laptop. Not to mention the emotional damage of thinking Mom was dying." There was a pause, then my mother's voice came on the line. "Honey, we're sorry if you felt misled, but family helps family. You know Amanda needed this break." The carefully crafted apology that wasn't actually an apology ignited my resolve further. If Amanda needed help, she could have asked honestly. You all chose deception instead, which tells me you knew what you were asking was unreasonable. "So you abandoned 3 innocent children as revenge?" Mom's voice dripped with manufactured outrage. "The children are having a wonderful time with their great-aunt, who is providing structure and stability. I video chat with them twice daily. This isn't about revenge. It's about consequences for adult choices. The conversation devolved further, with threats and guilt trips that would have crushed the old Kimberly. But I held firm, ending the call by saying, "I'm happy to discuss this when you're ready to have an adult conversation about boundaries and respect." Over the next few days, the calls and texts escalated. Amanda vacillated between rage, "You've ruined our vacation," and manipulation, "The kids are crying for me." Dad threatened everything from cutting me out of the will to telling my boss about my irresponsibility. Mom tried the guilt approach, claiming the stress was affecting her health, ironically similar to the lie that started it all. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries. I responded to each message with the same calm statement: "The children are safe and well cared for. We can discuss this when you return and are ready to have a respectful conversation." Meanwhile, in New York, I was working around the clock to save the Horizon launch. Nancy had been understandably upset, but gave me a chance to make things right when she saw my determination. Julian had stepped up admirably in my absence, keeping things afloat until I returned. "You look different," he observed during our first day back at the office. "More. I don't know, solid." I smiled, knowing exactly what he meant. Standing up for myself had changed something fundamental in how I carried myself. The updates from Carol were consistently positive. Under her care, the children were thriving with consistent routines and clear expectations. Tyler's behavior had improved dramatically with proper medication management. Carol had immediately contacted their pediatrician, whose information she already had as a family member. Lily was blossoming with the one-on-one attention during their art projects. Even Max was having fewer tantrums, responding well to Carol's gentle but firm boundaries. "I found Amanda's pediatrician information in about 5 minutes," Carol told me during one of our calls. "It was in her kitchen drawer under a pile of takeout menus. All she had to do was look." A week into their cruise, the tone of my family's messages began to shift. The angry accusations gave way to grudging acceptance, then awkward attempts at reconciliation. "We might have overreacted," Dad conceded in a voicemail. "But you still should have discussed your plans with us before taking such drastic action." It was as close to an admission of wrongdoing as I'd ever heard from him. What truly surprised me, however, was the reaction from the extended family. Word had spread about what happened, and instead of the unanimous condemnation my parents clearly expected, many relatives reached out to express support for my actions. "It's about time someone stood up to them," my cousin Rachel texted. "Amanda's been getting away with murder for years." My Uncle Mark, Dad's brother, actually called to say, "Good for you, kiddo. Jim and Sandra have been enabling Amanda's behavior too long. Maybe this will be the wake-up call they all need." Even my grandmother, usually the first to insist on family harmony at all costs, sent a card that simply read, "Sometimes love means setting boundaries. Proud of you." By the time my family returned from their cruise, public opinion had shifted decisively in my favor. They came home to find not only my letter detailing their manipulation, but also a community less willing to overlook their behavior than before. Amanda called the day after they returned, her tone subdued. "The kids seem happy at Carol's. They've been telling me about all the activities and rules." She said rules like it was a foreign concept. Max actually picked up his toys without being asked. "Carol is good with children," I replied neutrally. A long pause followed. "I didn't think about what my request would do to your job," she finally said. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest Amanda had come to acknowledging my reality in years. "No, you didn't," I agreed. And Dad and Mom didn't think about the emotional impact of lying about a serious illness. Another pause. "They thought you wouldn't come otherwise." "Because I have responsibilities of my own. Adult responsibilities that deserve respect." The conversation ended awkwardly, but it was the first time we'd spoken as equals rather than in our usual enabling/enabled dynamic. 2 days later, I received the most surprising message of all, a text from my father that contained just 5 words: "You might have been right." From him, It was practically a full concession. The Horizon launch ultimately went forward successfully, though with some scaled-back elements due to the time lost. Nancy recognized my extraordinary effort in salvaging the event and, in a surprising turn, used the family emergency as leverage with the client. Kimberly managed to deliver this caliber of event despite a genuine family crisis, she told them. Imagine what she can do without such obstacles. By the time I flew back to Phoenix 2 weeks later, this time on my own terms, with a clearly defined 3-day visit, something fundamental had shifted in my family dynamic. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. But for the first time, there was an acknowledgement that I had the right to set boundaries and that crossing them had consequences. 6 months after what my cousin Rachel had dubbed the Great Babysitting Mutiny, I found myself back in Phoenix for a weekend visit. Spring had brought desert wildflowers and a tentative new growth in my family relationships as well. The changes were subtle but significant. Amanda had actually called 2 weeks in advance to ask if I could watch the kids for a single evening during my visit, rather than assuming my availability. My parents had stopped their guilt trips when I couldn't make it for random family events. Most surprisingly, they'd all started acknowledging my career as a legitimate priority rather than an inconvenient obstacle to my family obligations. Tyler ran to hug me when I arrived, proudly showing me his science fair ribbon. And Carol helped me with the research, he explained. And Mom made sure I had time to work on it every day. Lily, more reserved but equally excited, had prepared a dance routine to show me. I practice for 30 minutes every day now, she informed me seriously. Mom got me a chart to track my progress. Even little Max seemed more centered, greeting me with a surprisingly gentle hug instead of his former tackling approach. We've been working on appropriate ways to show affection, Amanda explained, a hint of defensiveness in her tone, but also genuine pride. My sister had changed too. Not dramatically, leopards don't completely change their spots overnight, but meaningfully. She'd started taking parenting classes at the community center, prompted initially by Carol's influence, but continuing on her own. I realized I didn't actually know what I was doing, she admitted during a rare moment of vulnerability as we sat on the patio while the kids played in the yard. I just expected everyone to fill in the gaps for me. Parenting is hard, I acknowledged. I can't imagine doing it without support. But I took advantage of that support, she said, staring into her iced tea. Especially from you. For years. It was the closest thing to an apology I expected to get, and I accepted it for what it was, growth. My parents had made adjustments too. Mom had stopped her reflexive defense of Amanda's every action. Dad had begun acknowledging my professional accomplishments, even asking thoughtful questions about my work. The most profound change, however, was within me. The crisis had forced me to articulate and defend my boundaries in ways I'd never done before. The sky hadn't fallen. My family hadn't disowned me. In fact, our relationships had improved with clearer expectations and mutual respect. Professionally, I'd not only survived but thrived. Nancy had recognized my crisis management skills during the Horizon debacle, and I'd been promoted to partner 3 months later. My new position came with more responsibility, but also more flexibility to manage my own schedule, including reasonable time for family visits on my terms. That Sunday night, we gathered for dinner at my parents' house. Amanda had actually cooked instead of ordering takeout, and the kids had helped set the table. The conversation flowed more easily than it had in years, with everyone getting a chance to speak without interruption or dismissal. After dinner, as we sat in the living room, Dad cleared his throat in that way that signaled he had something important to say. "Your mother and I have been doing some thinking," he began, looking uncomfortable but determined, "about what happened last fall." The room grew quiet. We hadn't directly addressed the incident since it happened. "We shouldn't have lied to you," he continued. "It was wrong, and it showed a lack of respect for your life and commitments." Mom nodded, adding, "We took you for granted for a long time, Kimberly. We expected you to drop everything whenever we whenever Amanda needed something. "We're sorry," Dad finished simply. The words hung in the air, precious and unexpected. Not "we're sorry," but not "we're sorry you felt that way," just "we're sorry." A real apology. "Thank you," I said, emotion making my voice thick. "That means a lot to me." Amanda, never one to handle emotional moments gracefully, jumped in. "And I've been trying to be more self-sufficient. Carol's been helping me with budgeting and schedules." She glanced at our aunt, who had been invited to dinner at my request. Carol smiled encouragingly. "Amanda's made remarkable progress. She hasn't asked me to babysit on short notice once this month." "Baby steps," Amanda admitted with a self-deprecating laugh. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave for my hotel, Tyler approached me with a serious expression. "Are you still mad at Mom and Grandma and Grandpa?" he asked. I knelt to his level. "I'm not mad, Tyler. I was hurt and disappointed, but we're working through it." He nodded thoughtfully. "Mom explained that you have important work in New York, like she has important work being our mom." "That's right," I agreed, touched by this evidence of Amanda's changed perspective. "And she said everyone deserves respect, even when they say no." I hugged him tight, my heart full. "Your mom is absolutely right about that." As I drove to my hotel, I reflected on the unexpected gifts that had come from that painful episode. By finally standing up for myself, I had not only gained self-respect, but had actually helped my family grow. Our relationships were healthier now, built on mutual respect rather than obligation and guilt. The path forward wouldn't always be smooth. Old patterns have a way of reasserting themselves in times of stress. But we had new awareness now and tools to communicate more honestly. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like an equal member of my family rather than just the reliable one who could be counted on to sacrifice without complaint. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others is to show them how to treat you properly. Sometimes a smile in the face of manipulation, followed by setting firm boundaries, can change not just your life, but the lives of those around you. If you've ever found yourself in a similar situation, taken for granted, manipulated, or expected to continually sacrifice your needs for others, I hope my story gives you courage. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy relationships. And sometimes those who push back hardest against your boundaries are the ones who needed them most all along. I'd love to hear your stories of setting boundaries with family members. Have you ever had to take a stand like I did? Drop a comment below sharing your experience, and don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. If this resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, true family support goes both ways.